Sometimes the hardest part is to start. Unless, of course, it is your newest, latest, greatest obsession, but I digress. Many of us ADHDers get caught in a vicious cycle because we know that getting organized would be supremely beneficial for our ADHD brains and life in general. But we don't know where to start, or we're struggling to motivate ourselves to start. And so we just sit around and wait for divine inspiration to inspire us, or hope that we'll come across the ultimate hack that will solve our problem with the minimal amount of effort. Then comes the day when we can't find something that we need the moment that we need it, or we lose something that's really important and we think to ourselves, I really need to get organized. And then the cycle starts all over again. But hopefully not after today, because on today's episode of the ADHD Mompreneur, we are going to discuss strategies for starting an organizing project and maintaining it after you're done. But before we dig into my tips for starting and maintaining an organizing project, I'd like to take a second to introduce myself in case you're new here. My name is Christy Lingo, and I am the ADHD Mompreneur. I provide mom-centered executive function coaching and accountability for ADHD mom business owners looking to finally follow through on their big ideas and make them the success that they know is possible. But I wasn't always an ADHD coach. In fact, I spent over a decade as a professional organizer. And the reason I started learning about working with ADHD populations was due to the fact that I had 2 ADHD organizing clients, and I wanted to make sure that I was serving them in the best way possible. It also led me to my own diagnosis, but that's another story for another day. If you would like to know more about how I could help support you in juggling all the things that life throws at you as an ADHD mom and ADHD entrepreneur, visit theadhdmompreneur.com. And while you're there, pick up my free 11 essential checklists for ADHD mompreneurs so you can make fewer mistakes, feel more productive and organized, and miss fewer steps while you're working. Okay, so let's chat starting and maintaining an organizing project when you're a busy ADHD mom. To start, let's give a little background into why it might be that you struggle with organizing. And to be honest, it's because organizing is an executive function, and those of us with ADHD struggle with regulating the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is directly related to executing executive functions. So it's completely understandable why those of us with ADHD may struggle to organize our thoughts or organize our physical stuff. But as I love to say, ADHD is an explanation, not an excuse. Meaning it helps to explain why you might struggle to start or maintain an organizing project, but it does not mean that organizing is impossible for you. We just might have to come at your organizing project at a little different angle. We might need a little bit of extra support when it comes to organizing projects, and that's perfectly okay. So let's dive into my suggestions for how you go about starting an organizing project. First, you want to schedule the time. Yep, like on your calendar, blocked out as an appointment. Because when you're a busy mom, or you're running a business, or you're a busy mom running a business, or especially if you are a busy ADHD mom running a business, the time to do all of those tasks that are piling up on your to-do list is not going to just magically appear out of nowhere. If it's a priority to you to get a space in your home organized, you need to block out the time on your calendar in order to do it. And a few tips as you look to schedule time to organize your space. Remember that your ADHD time blindness is probably going to tell you that you don't need that much time for this project, or that you can do way more in an allotted time than is actually possible. And some of this is due to the fact that while organizing is an executive function itself, An organizing project also involves the executive functions of planning, initiating a task, and making decisions, which could potentially make your project take a bit longer if your neurotransmitters aren't firing. There is also the potential for distraction. You know as well as I that even with the best plans to organize a space, we can find ourselves down a rabbit hole when we come across something that we forgot we had, or when we find something that belongs in another room, so we take it to that room and discover something that belongs in a third room, so we take it to that room, and the next thing we know, we are picking gum out of the carpeting in our kids' room instead of working on the initial organizing project that we started. So ideally, schedule more time than you think you will actually need for an organizing project. Rough estimates for how long spaces may take in your home include a home office may take 6 to 18 hours, depending on how much paper is involved. Garages and basements may take between 8 to 20 hours. Closets may take 2 to 8 hours. Toy rooms may take 4 to 8 hours. And kitchens may take 4 to 8 hours. I know that this may seem like this is way more time that you could possibly need, but you have to trust me. I can't even tell you how many projects I've worked on with a client where they swore up and down that they could finish the whole thing in 1 to 2 sessions, which would be like 3 to 6 hours. And the project ended up taking double that amount of time or even longer. And these weren't necessarily people who were struggling with their executive function. Deciding what to get rid of, what to keep, and where to put the things you've decided to keep can be surprisingly exhausting. And this is especially so for those of us with ADHD who already have a taxed executive function system. And one more note on scheduling before we move on. Make sure when you schedule your project that it doesn't butt up against any additional commitments that you might have that could be impacted if you don't finish your project. You want to make sure that you have plenty of time to either finish or put the items that you were working on away in a manner that it would be easy for you to jump back in the next time you have a work session scheduled. For instance, if your kid has a soccer game on Saturday afternoon, it may not be the best idea in the world to schedule your garage clean out for a Saturday morning before the game, just in case you don't get it all done. And if you're struggling to find a time where you can fit that entire project in, you may want to enlist my second tip, which is to make a plan and break it down. I know that's technically 2 things, but making your plan is essentially breaking your project down into smaller pieces that you can follow. It's important for you to make a plan because A, it can help you better assess how much time you need to set aside. B, it can give you a checklist to make sure you don't forget any important areas. And C, it can make it easier to break the project into different work sessions if you don't have the time to do it all at once. Let's take a project like organizing your closet. Your steps might look like pulling out everything you no longer wear, pulling out everything you know doesn't fit you anymore, grouping all the items that are similar together, like short sleeves with short sleeves or red items with red items, and finally putting everything back into the closet in the areas you've designated for them to go. If you don't have an entire afternoon that you could dedicate to all 4 of these steps at once, you could potentially do 1 or 2 steps at a time and still accomplish the goal of organizing your closet. One session could be pulling out everything you don't want anymore because it doesn't fit or it's not in style or you just don't like it. The other session could be all about grouping the like items together and putting everything back into the closet in the area you want it to be. By breaking the project down, you'll know all the steps that need to go into the project in order for it to be complete, and it makes it easier for you to work on it in increments rather than needing to dedicate an entire block to completing the project. My final tip to help you start an organizing project is to find accountability. Your accountability could be somebody living in your home. It could be a friend or family member who likes to organize and wants to help. It could be hiring a professional organizer because you know that if the time is blocked on the calendar and you're paying for it, you are definitely going to make progress on this project. Accountability can also be having a friend or family member check in on your project. They can call you after you've finished a work session to see how the project is going or if you were able to complete it. They can text you the following day to ask for before and after pictures so they can see your progress. Just remember that the point of enlisting accountability isn't to make you feel bad or guilty if you're not making progress or if things aren't going the way that you had hoped that they would. I know how RSD can creep in and rear its ugly head even when you've asked somebody to check in on you. Your accountability buddy is there to remind you what it was that you wanted to work on and perhaps make sure that you remember why it was that you wanted to do this in the first place. They're there to provide a sense of obligation, which can often be a great boost to help us ADHDers get over a motivational hurdle. So after you've made your plan and scheduled the time that you need in order to work on your project, look for some sort of accountability to make sure that you stay on track. And before we wrap up today, I do want to address what I think of as one of the most overlooked steps when it comes to organizing: maintenance. I mean, if you're going to put the time and the effort and the energy and the money into getting organized, you might as well maintain it, right? The great thing about maintenance organizing is that it typically takes a fraction of the amount of time that it takes for the initial organizing project because you've already decluttered things that shouldn't be there, you've assigned homes to the items that are staying, and you might have even labeled spaces or bins for these items to go back to. Another great thing: the steps for maintaining an organizing project are pretty much the same for starting an organizing project. You need to schedule the time because the time to maintain your space isn't going to just magically appear. You need to break down what you want to do into smaller, more manageable tasks, especially if you are working with a limited amount of time or you'll be working over multiple work sessions. And you need to tell someone what you plan to do, whether that is someone in your home or outside of your home, so that they can check in on you to make sure that you are maintaining your space the way you want to. Believe me, it is much easier to spend a little bit of time week after week or month after month maintaining a space than it is to let it get out of hand again and then have to go all the way back to the beginning and hit the reset button. I'm curious if you have any additional ADHD organizing questions or ADHD questions in general. Drop your questions in the comments below, or if you're not on YouTube or Spotify and can't leave a comment, you can drop me an email at christy@theadhdmompreneur.com. And while you're down there leaving your comment, you may as well go ahead and hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already, so you won't miss any of my upcoming episodes of the ADHD Mompreneur, like next week, when we'll be talking about procrastivity, aka thinking you're being productive, but you're actually just avoiding doing a task that you need to do, but you don't really feel like doing or really want to do. I am totally guilty of this. And if you are too, make sure that you join me next week. Until then, keep making your ADHD journey part of your success story.
If you're a business owning mom with ADHD, you're going to need to grab my free customizable essential checklists for ADHD mompreneurs by visiting bit.ly/checklists for ADHD mompreneurs or by following the link in the episode description. Do it now before you forget. Until next time.